A couple in New Jersey bought what was supposed to be their dream home. Before closing, they were paying about $4,000 a month in rent. And after closing, their housing payment jumped to about $6,000 a month. That's $24,000 more per year just to own instead of rent. So here's the question. Is buying a home worth it in 2026? Or are a lot of people still chasing the American dream using old math? Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel, and this is American Affordability. And today I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people are feeling, but not everyone wants to say out loud. For generations, Americans were told that buying a home meant you made it, right? You got a job, you saved money, bought a house, you checked the box. And to be clear, I understand why people feel that way. There's something emotional about owning a home. There is, for many people, pride in it. There is stability in it. There's comfort in knowing that the place you live is yours. But the housing market has changed. And in 2026, the renting versus buying conversation is not as simple as people want it to be. Because if buying a home makes your life harder or more stressful and more financially fragile, is that still the dream? Or is it a financial trap dressed up as success? And that's what I want to unpack today. And I'm not making this video to tell everyone, don't buy a house. That would be way too simple. For some people, buying absolutely makes sense. But for other people, renting and investing, the difference may actually put them in a stronger financial position over time. The problem is that a lot of people don't even consider that option, the second option, because they've been taught that renting is failure and owning is success. And I think that mindset is getting a lot of people into trouble. So let's go back to that New Jersey couple. They were living in the New Jersey and New York area. They kept waiting for home prices to come down. And you've probably heard stories like this before. The way they usually get framed is, we waited too long, or prices never came down, or we should have bought sooner. And I understand that feeling. I mean, nobody wants to look back and feel like they missed their chance. But when you look closer at the numbers, the story gets a lot more complicated. This couple eventually bought a roughly $1 million house in New Jersey. Before buying, they were paying about $4,000 a month in rent. After buying, their monthly housing payment jumped to about $6,000 a month. So just by becoming homeowners, their housing cost went up by about $2,000 every single month. So that's $24,000 a year. And this is where I think people need to slow down, because the question is not just, can I buy the house? The question is, what am I giving up to buy the house? The extra $2,000 a month in this case could be invested. I mean, it could go into the stock market. It could go into a retirement account. It could go toward paying down debt or building a larger emergency fund, as we discussed with somebody else's story the other day. I mean, it could go toward even starting a business, helping your family, giving yourself some breathing room. And I mean, breathing room matters because a lot of people technically qualify for a mortgage, but then they become house poor. They have the house, they have the keys, they have the address, but now every month feels tight. And that is not freedom. That's not the American dream that most people imagine. So before we go any further, I want you to keep that $24,000 number in your head, because that's not just a number. That's vacations or retirement savings or emergency money. I mean, it's really the difference between sleeping at night and constantly wondering how next month is going to be tight, or is it going to be tighter than this month or better than this month? Always worrying. And this is exactly why the housing affordability crisis feels so different right now. People talk about home prices as if the only thing that matters is whether prices go up or down. But affordability is not just about price. It's the price of the home, the interest rate, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the HOA. I mean, HOAs are rampant here in Florida. I'm in an HOA with my house. There's the repairs and the income you have left after all of that. That last part is the one people don't talk about enough. What do you actually have left? Because owning a home does not automatically make you financially secure. If anything, buying the wrong house at the wrong price can do the opposite. There's something people are calling the new homeowner penalty. And I've seen it in some different articles online. The concept is important, and it basically means that people buying homes today are spending a much larger share of their income on housing than people who already own homes. So in 2024, new home buyers were spending around 26% of their income on housing. Existing homeowners were spending around 20%. At first, that gap doesn't really sound that huge, 6 percentage points. But in real life, that can mean thousands of dollars a year. And that's money that does not go toward food or savings or retirement, travel, kids, medical bills, car repairs, anything else. And that's why this matters. It's not just a statistic. It means the person buying today may be living a completely different financial life than the person who bought 5 or 10 years ago. Same neighborhood, same type of house, totally different pressure. And I think a lot of people feel that pressure, even if they don't describe it that way. They just know that the math feels wrong. They know the payment feels too high. They know the down payment feels impossible. And they know that even with a decent income, the house they thought they'd be able to buy feels out of reach. And there's a reason for that. Home prices nationwide are up dramatically since 2019. But inflation-adjusted incomes have barely moved. Think about what that means in plain English. A lot of households are not actually much richer than they were several years ago. But the cost of buying a home is much higher. So when people say, why has the housing market slowed down? That's a big part of the answer. People didn't suddenly stop wanting houses. They just can't comfortably afford the prices anymore. And I think that's an important distinction. Demand is not the same thing as affordability. And that is really the core of this entire video. There may be millions of people who would love to buy a home, but wanting a home and being able to responsibly afford one are two very different things. That's why I don't think mortgage rates are the whole story. Yes, mortgage rates matter. Of course they do. But if incomes had kept up with home prices, higher rates would still be painful, but maybe more manageable. The problem is that prices surged. Rates rose, insurance went up in many places, taxes went up in many places, and wages, they didn't keep pace. That combination is brutal for buyers. And here in Florida, you can really feel that. You don't have to be an economist to understand it. I mean, just look at what people are paying for housing and insurance and basic living costs, and then compare that to what average wages look like. Something feels off because something is off. And that's why I think Florida deserves to be part of this conversation. Because for a while, Florida was treated like this unstoppable housing market. Everyone wanted to move here. Prices could only go up. Buyers had to compete. Sellers had all the leverage. But eventually, affordability matters. Eventually, insurance matters. Wages matter. Eventually, people look at the numbers and say, I'm not paying that. And when enough buyers say that, the market starts to change. Now, some analysts will say the issue is mostly inventory. And in some places, that's true. Parts of the Northeast still have very limited supply. Some areas of the Midwest are still tight too. But that is not true everywhere. In a lot of markets, inventory has improved. There are more homes selling. I'm sorry, not selling, but sitting. There's more homes sitting. There's more price cuts. There's more sellers who they're willing to negotiate. And yet some prices in some places are stubborn. And why is that? Because a lot of sellers still think we're in the market from 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, I discussed it already in one of my videos. They list their house high. They wait. The buyers don't show up. And then maybe they pull it off the market. A few months later, they relist. And the same thing happens again. That tells you something. It tells you that the market is changing, but a lot of sellers have not fully accepted it yet. And this is where it gets really important for your specific market, because national headlines can be misleading. Median home prices can still rise even if parts of the market are weakening. The median price is just the middle transaction. So if more expensive homes are the ones selling and fewer lower priced homes are selling, the median can move higher. That does not automatically mean that every house is worth more. It just means the mix of homes selling has changed. And that matters because a lot of people see a headline like, home prices rise again, and they panic. They think, I better buy now or I'll never be able to. But before you panic, you need to look at your actual local market. Are homes sitting longer? Are sellers cutting prices? Are concessions coming back? Are inspections becoming normal again? Are buyers, are they able to negotiate repairs? These details matter a lot more than a national headline. Because if homes in your area are sitting for 90 days, getting price cuts, and sellers are offering closing cost help, then I don't care what the national median price says. Your local market is telling a completely different story. And that is the story that matters to you. Now, this is where the emotional side of home buying gets dangerous, because people, they don't always buy because the numbers make sense. Sometimes they buy because they're afraid. They're afraid that prices are going to go higher. They're afraid that rates are going to go higher. They're afraid they'll never get another chance. And I mean, a lot of people, they're afraid they'll be judged for renting. They're afraid that they're falling behind everyone else. And I mean, I get it. That fear is real, especially when you see other people buying homes, especially when your parents tell you home ownership is the goal, or especially when social media makes it look like everyone else is moving forward and you're standing still. But fear is not a financial plan. That line is important. Fear is not a financial plan. If the only reason you're buying is because you feel like you have to before it's too late, that's a sign to pause. Not necessarily to walk away, but to pause. Run the numbers, look at the full payment, look at the maintenance, look at insurance, look at taxes, look at your emergency fund, look at what happens if one income goes away. And look at what you could do with the difference if you kept renting. Because when someone goes from $4,000 in rent to $6,000 as a homeowner, that extra $2,000 a month is not a small detail. That is the whole story. Over 1 year, like I said, it's $24,000. Over 5 years, it's $120,000 before you even factor in investment growth. I mean, over 30 years, if that money is consistently invested, the difference can be enormous. And that's why I think the rent versus buy conversation needs to be more honest. Renting is not always throwing money away. Buying is not always building wealth. It really depends on the numbers. It depends on the market. It depends on your market. It depends on how long you plan to stay in that place. It depends upon your maintenance costs. It depends on what you do with the money you save by renting. And if you rent and spend every dollar you save, then yes, you may not come out ahead. But if you rent and consistently invest the difference, that can be a very different financial picture. And I think that's the part people skip. They compare a homeowner to a renter, but they don't compare a homeowner to a disciplined renter investor. And those are not the same thing. So before someone says, you have to buy because that's how you build wealth, I think the better question is compared to what? Compared to renting and doing nothing? Maybe. Compared to renting and investing thousands of dollars a year? That's a very different conversation. And this is also where we have to talk about family help. Because another thing keeping this housing market going is that a lot of parents are helping their adult children buy homes. And when you hear that, part of it is heartwarming. Sure, parents want to help their kids. That's understandable. Shout out to my parents. They've helped me. Love you, Mom and Dad. But it also tells us something uncomfortable. If so many younger buyers need help from their parents just to get into the market, then maybe the market itself is not healthy. Because if the only way a normal person can buy a home is with a huge gift or a cosigner, debt payoff help, closing cost help, or just family money, then what does that say about affordability as a whole? It says the ladder is getting harder to climb. And it also it helps to explain why prices have stayed higher than some people expected. When parents step in with cash, that adds purchasing power to the market. It helps buyers compete. But it can also keep prices elevated because the market is no longer only being supported by what individual buyers can afford on their own. In a way, family assistance acts almost like a private subsidy. And I'm not saying that as an insult. If parents can help their kids, I understand why they would. But from a market perspective, it matters. Because if a buyer can't afford the down payment, but then receives $50,000 from family, that buyer can suddenly compete. And if enough people do that, prices don't have to fall as much as they otherwise might. And that's one reason this housing market has been so strange. Affordability is terrible. Sales are sluggish. But prices have not collapsed nationally because there are still buyers with cash. There are still wealthy buyers. There are still parents helping children. There are still people moving equity from one house to another. But the average buyer, that person is struggling. And that's why you can have two things happening at the same time. Some people are still buying, but many regular buyers are stuck. Both can be true. Now, one headline that got attention recently was that pending home sales increased slightly, and this was in March. And on the surface, that sounds positive. This is where you have to be careful. March usually looks better than February. Spring is normally the busiest season for real estate. So the better question is not, did activity improve from February to March? The better question is, how does this March compare to last March? So we're talking 2026 compared to 2025. Because year over year numbers tell you a lot more. And when you look at it that way, the market still looks weaker. Pending sales were down still compared to the previous year. And pending sales are not closed sales, right? They're signed contracts. A signed contract does not always become a completed sale. Buyers can and do back out. Financing can fall through. Inspections can uncover problems. Appraisals can come in low. And we've seen contract cancellations become a bigger part of the story, as I've discussed already in some videos. So a small bump in pending sales does not mean the market is suddenly booming again. All it means is that some buyers are still trying. But the closed sales number matters more. That's the number that tells you who actually made it to the finish line. And if closed sales are still weak, that tells you buyers are cautious. They are negotiating. They are backing out, right? They're not behaving like the panic buyers we saw during the pandemic housing boom. And that's a major shift. A few years ago, buyers were waiving inspections, offering well over asking, and doing pretty much anything to win. Now in many markets, buyers have more options. They can ask for repairs, they can ask for credits, they can negotiate, they can walk away. That doesn't mean that homes are cheap. Really, they're not cheap, but it does mean that the balance of power is changing. And that brings us to listings. One of the most important numbers in this market at the moment is the increase in new listings. More homes coming onto the market means buyers have more choices. And choices matter. When buyers have no options, they overpay. When buyers do have options, they slow down. They compare. They negotiate. And then they start asking, is this really worth it? Or, is it really worth the price that's being asked? That is a healthier market. And it's also why sellers may have to become more realistic. If your home is one of only 3 available in the area, you can ask a lot for it. But if your home is only is one of 30 similar homes, buyers are going to compare it to everything else. They're going to notice the price. They're going to notice the roof. They're going to notice the insurance cost. They're going to notice whether the kitchen needs work. And they're going to notice the big things, right? And they're also going to ask for concessions if the numbers don't work. And that's what a more balanced market looks like. And honestly, I think buyers deserve that after the last several years. For years, the market heavily favored sellers. Sellers had the leverage, sellers had the equity, sellers had the bidding wars, sellers had buyers fighting over limited inventory. Meanwhile, buyers faced higher prices, higher mortgage rates, larger down payments, and more competition. So when people say, you sound like you're rooting for buyers, I mean, I haven't had that yet, but I can see it coming. I'll be honest, I kind of am. Not because I want sellers to lose money, but because buyers have been getting crushed. A balanced market is not a bad thing. A balanced market is healthier for everyone. If a seller has to price the home realistically, that's not a tragedy. It's normal. I mean, if a buyer can get an inspection and negotiate repairs and avoid overpaying by $50,000, that's not unfair. That's normal. We just got used to an abnormal market. And now, in many places, we're slowly moving away from that. Some of the markets being described as buyer-friendly right now, or at least moving closer to buyers' markets, include places like Atlanta, Austin, Jacksonville, Miami, Nashville, Orlando, Tampa, Riverside, California. And that gets my attention because, I mean, I'm here in Tampa. It's right in my backyard. And I've seen how much things have changed in Florida in the about 5 years I've lived here now. For a while, it felt like everyone wanted to move here. I mean, prices could only go up. Buyers had to accept whatever sellers were offering. But markets don't stay frozen forever. I mean, eventually affordability matters, insurance matters, wages matter. Eventually buyers say, I'm not paying that, right? And when enough buyers say that, the market does change. I mean, that doesn't mean every market is crashing. It doesn't mean that every seller's desperate or that everyone should wait forever. But it does mean that buyers have more room to think. And that's the message I really want people to hear. You don't have to panic. You don't have to buy just because someone told you home ownership is the dream. And you don't have to stretch yourself to the absolute limit just to prove something to other people. If buying makes sense for you, great. But if renting gives you more flexibility, more cash flow, more ability to invest, that can also be a smart decision. The key is knowing your numbers. And if you want to know whether your local market is shifting, don't just look at national headlines. Look at what's happening around you. How many homes are for sale? How long are they sitting? How many have price cuts? Are sellers offering closing cost help? Are homes still getting multiple offers? Are buyers waiving inspections? Are sellers pulling homes off the market because they can't get the price they want? Those are details that will tell you more than any headline ever will. For example, if homes are still selling in a few days above asking price, you may still be in a seller's market. But if homes are sitting for months, getting multiple price reductions and offering concessions, buyers probably have more leverage. And I mean, that matters because leverage changes your decision. It changes what you can ask for. It changes how much time you have. It changes whether you need to rush. And in a market like this, rushing can be expensive. So before wrapping up, I want to zoom out for a second. Housing affordability is not just an American problem. Other countries are dealing with the same pressure. Switzerland, for example, has been considering tighter restrictions on foreign ownership of real estate to help protect housing affordability for local residents. Whether you agree with that approach or not, it shows that this is not just a United States issue. All over the world, countries are dealing with rising housing costs, limited supply in some areas, investor demand, wealth inequality, and younger generations struggling to get into the market. Housing has become one of the biggest affordability issues of our time. And I think that's why I think we need to be more honest about it, because the old advice was simple. buy a house, hold it, build wealth. For a lot of people, that worked. But the numbers today, they're different. The prices are different, the interest rates are different, insurance costs are higher. The income picture is different. So the decision has to be different too. So let's get back to the question from the beginning. That New Jersey couple went from $4,000 a month rent to $6,000 a month as homeowners. Was that the American dream? Maybe for them, emotionally, it was. But financially, that depends on what they gave up. And that's the real answer. Buying a home is not automatically good. Renting is not automatically bad. The right decision depends on your actual life, your income, your savings, your market, your family, your goals, your stress level, your future plans. Home ownership can be great, but it's not automatically the American dream. And renting is not automatically failure. The real goal is not to impress people. The real goal is to build a life that's stable, affordable, and sustainable. For some people, that means buying. And for others, it may mean renting and investing. There's no one size fits all answer. But there is one rule I think everyone should follow. Do the math before you fall in love with the dream. Because the dream is only worth it if you can actually afford the life that comes with it. If you want more videos that break down the real numbers behind what's happening to American families, please subscribe. That's exactly what we do here. So tell me in the comments, did you buy or are you renting right now? And do you still think homeownership is the American dream? Or do you think the financial equation has changed? Thank you for watching and for supporting my channel here on American Affordability. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.